So you made it to the best ball playoffs, but you didn't have Zay Jones or Jerick McKinnon or KJ Osborne. This is a safe place. You can share the teams that you were excited about that didn't get through. However, maybe you did sneak through. Maybe you snuck through without Jalen Hurts, which could be a pretty good thing. We'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to run through some teams. We're going to look at some of your teams. We're going to break down some high-stakes teams and talk about the fallout from Week 15 and what that means for Week 16 and the Fantasy Football Championships over these next 2 weeks. Let's do it. So, Rob, we chatted 2 days ago. Since then,
we saw some bad football plays live.
We saw a lot of bad football. I told myself I wasn't going to watch because only bad things could happen to me in that game. And then it was going really well in the first half. I'm like, let's watch the second half. Allen Lazard sucks, right? Blah, blah, blah. The Rams are so bad that Aaron Rodgers has no interest in even like throwing the ball down the field. And then, of course, old Tyler Higbee, I think I lost by like 0.4 or something like that in one team because of the late Tyler. I've never experienced when I need points not to happen and I turn it on to sweat it. They always score, right?
Always.
It always happens. But huge bombshell Jalen Hurts injury, which we don't really know what it even means right now, but obviously it could be catastrophic for teams in this round of the best ball playoffs. But just, man, crazy last few days. Absolutely insane last few days. I know you got, in particular, one team you're really excited about, but how are you feeling, as we start to kick off the Week 16 sweat?
Well, the Hurts stuff is sort of terrifying, but not as much as I thought it was going to be. Now that all of our underdogs perfectly are done advancing before we started this show, I got to look at some of my exposure, and, it was Hurts was one of the main 3-4 quarterbacks, but shockingly, I advanced more Mahomes teams on underdog than Hurts. Now, over on DraftKings, I advanced 4 to that finals in the 5. 3 out of 4 of them are Hurts teams. So that's a little rough. So there's that news. There's some exposures that I am like shocked by that I have advancing. What's your Travis Kelce exposure? Just curiosity.
Oh, yeah.
That you're advancing to Week 16.
I think 0. But on underdog, I haven't gone through my DraftKings teams yet, but I think 0 Kelce. Yeah, 0 Kelce.
I am Waller also at 0 Kelce. And
no, I lied. I'm sorry. I have 1. I wrote it off mostly because it's a Hurts team, but I guess it's technically not dead. But it's probably my worst team. Although I don't know if Travis Kelce can be on a worse team, but like if I lose Hurts, obviously that's really bad for that team. But so one of I only have 6 teams left on underdog across all contests. I didn't do a lot of the puppies and stuff. We've talked about that. I was super drained and I was hammering some DraftKings stuff at the end. But 4 BBMs, a super flex team, and a puppy 4 team, and I believe it's 1 Travis Kelce across all of them. Maybe 2.
I mean, that's more than me. I went and I was looking at the tight end. I'm like, where the hell's Kelsey's name? And I'm like scrolling and looking. And I'm like, I didn't advance a Travis Kelce team. I don't think I did on DraftKings either, because who the hell knows what happens? Thank God we have our tools over at Spike Week that we can still find a way to look at these teams.
See your teams. Yeah.
Because if you go into the app, like when I'm out and about and I'm trying to look at this stuff, they're just in the ether. There's not even a best ball tab right now. Just gone. Just, don't worry about it. You'll see it by Thursday.
Yeah, exactly. Trust us. Just trust me, bro.
Yeah, just trust me. You advance 4 teams. Yeah.
It's like somebody posts a statistic on Twitter and it's a source. Just trust me, bro. Like that's the DraftKings moment of these like 3 days. You're like, I don't know. Did I get paid the right amount of money? Did the teams I thought advance actually? Is it those? I have no fucking idea what's going on.
Is there anything worse than, oh my God, just make your product fun. More people would want to do it. Like, you just don't make the product fun. Underdog knows what's up. They're like, they're tweeting about advancing the teams. They're like, and we're getting ready to advance teams. And then, you're going to see your pods. All teams are advanced. Go take a look. And DraftKings is like, yeah, ether. Find it. You want to find it? Go to the quantum realm with Ant-Man.
Yeah, exactly. There is a space, you can find those old teams, but like you said, it's just mixed in. God forbid, I have not been playing a ton of DFS contests and lineups and stuff. So all this stuff at this moment in time kicks to your history. Can you only imagine if you're still playing tons of 150 max and tons of different slates and DFS? It's just like you got to start filtering down to best ball teams and shit, and it's just a nightmare.
Yeah, they're probably going to institute best ball late swap at some point. It's just a nightmare over there. We
pulled our users, and they said they don't like it when their second round pick gets hurt. So we decided to put late swap in. If you drafted Javonte Williams, here you go. Here's Latavius Murray on your teams now.
Yeah, so there's some interesting things. I have a rookies and sophomore team that got through, and I went and I looked at like some of the advancing teams. It's like a 14-16 player pod or something. Literally every team has Ramondre. Literally every team but one or two has Justin Fields. So it's like it's down to the receivers for the most part. It feels like, I mean, you can have some outliers too, like some other guys, but it's just so funny that it worked that way. And then we're going to talk about the other advances.
Ross says, I hope DK drops Minshew on my fucking team while they do whatever it is they do in the ether.
Please do.
That's great.
There's 2 Minshew teams in Best Ball Mania still.
It's like still around.
Yeah.
What's wrong with these people? What is wrong with these people? I love to galbrain some shit, but we're taking Gardner Minshew. Like, oh my god. Anyway,
it's crazy
people
stuff.
Are sick.
It's funny, but I am really excited to talk about some of our stuff, see some of our listeners' stuff, some of your pods. I know. I wish we could look at your big entry pods over on DK, but again,
I know, me too. Hopefully
later time.
Hopefully, later this week we'll find some time.
I mean, hopefully they're live for Saturday's games by then. I mean, that's what we're hoping for, right? That we can at least see them then.
Before we get into yours, I am because we can't really. We could show it on Draft IQ, but we can focus on some of the other teams and the teams that everybody can see, like on Underdog. But I am excited. We will probably discuss later in this week, when possible, my $333 single entry team on DraftKings, because it got through. It is almost entirely healthy. Lost Rashad Bateman. That is it. Now, quarterback is bad. I'm basically drawing to Lawrence, which we'll definitely talk some more about Lawrence and the Jags on this show, but was able to get through with kind of like Zay, saved my life basically. So I got through Devontae and Diggs, who both didn't that was my 1-2 turn picks. Didn't do anything. Have Pollard, Ramondre, got the big AJ Dillon game. I want to say Mark Andrews is on that team. So it's like no, Mark Andrews on a different team. But anyway, it's like totally healthy, kind of a little bit unique. I think, Ramondre's on there, Chalky, Zay will be popular, but got through some guys that you're like, Hacker's been talking about it in chat a lot. Shout out to Hacker if you're not in the Discord and don't know who he is. You need to get in there because he's both building incredible tools and a wealth of best ball knowledge.
In fairness, nobody knows who he is.
Yeah, I mean, I barely know who he is, and I talk to him more than anybody. His name's Hacker, for fuck's sake. Yeah. So, but he was mentioning the point of KJ, Osborne, Zay Jones, McKinnon, etc., was to see who they could carry into this round and hopefully week 17 for you. And it was such a perfect way of putting it, and that's kind of what happened for me in this particular contest. I want to say McKinnon's on there too, but just like a 0 RB team that all my best picks are happen to be running backs, at least this week. But you carry a Devontae or a Diggs or something like that now in week 16. Like, I can't count on Zay against the Jets. Like, I just can't be counting on him to help me win my pod probably. So what happens now? I'm gonna now I need Diggs, Devontae, etc. to step up basically. And so that's the power of those guys. That was just kind of my one random tangent team from there that maybe we'll get to later, but it's actually the team I'm probably most excited for. So I wish we could look at it too.
Yeah. I want to talk about last night's game real quick and how frustrating best ball can be, because we go all year. And one of the main guys I was fading for the majority of the year was AJ Dillon. I didn't like his price point.
Right.
I didn't like his offense. I'm not saying that he's a bad player. It didn't correlate to what I thought was a value for him. So I wasn't drafting him. He was real limited, like at the amount of times that I drafted him. Aaron Jones, I took a little bit of here and there, not much, but I was taking Aaron Jones here and there in the second round. And then we get this matchup in week 15, the first round of the playoffs. And if you had said back in the offseason, you'd be like, oh, well, Dylan, you're not really drafting for the first week of the playoffs because he's playing the Rams. Because the Rams are supposed to be this great defensive team and everything like that. And you'd expect them to do nothing, good run defense. And then everybody that gets this guy through just gets there with AJ Dillon scoring twice. And it's so frustrating, man. It's like everything that you were right about everything through 14 weeks. AJ Dillon was, a minimal help to your best ball teams to get you there. He sure as hell isn't the one who got you to the playoffs. But if you carried his ass to the playoffs, guess what? He knocked a few of my BBM teams out.
Me too.
Like I was live for 4 to 7 teams. I could have got 4 up to 7. And because of like AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones, I got 4, which sucks, but it is what it is. So I just hate when that shit happens where like you got something right all year. You feel great about it for 4 months, and then he comes off and he toasts you.
Yep.
For week 15. And it's just like that is so frustrating, man. But that's part of the game. It is part of the game.
We saw a lot of that this week, which does make it interesting. Like we'll get into tons of offseason discussion, obviously, around a lot of this. And I haven't developed my thoughts, but exactly what you just said. We spend all year being like, how do we find Josh Jacobs, right? And how do we find Jalen Hurts? And how do we find whatever, those particular league winners, Garrett Wilson, etc. And then the whole script gets flipped once we got to the playoffs, right? So Zay and Ramondre, I guess I'm just spitballing off the top of my head, obviously Justin Jefferson, but like Zay and Ramondre were like definitely pretty much smashes all season. McKinnon was like, whatever, like on a 0 RB team, you used his 8 points every once in a while, but not really anything super crazy, right? And then you get to the playoffs, and we can sit here and talk about, oh my God, you idiot, you faded Josh Jacobs or whatever. And it's like, Josh Jacobs didn't fucking matter this week. Jalen Hurts, frankly, didn't matter, and he scored like 40 fantasy points. The KJ Osborne's, who like I wasn't taking KJ Osborne. I didn't see it. At his, if he was much cheaper, he went, and I didn't realize this. I was looking at ADP. He was like around 145, which isn't like early, but Zay went at 180. And I'm like, how the fuck did Zay Jones go at 180 and KJ Osborne went at 145? Like, what's really I don't know. So anyway, I wasn't drafting KJ Osborne. I wasn't drafting, to your point, AJ Dillon, although I happen to have a couple of AJ Dillon teams still around, which is funny. To your point, he's like, total outsized gains of, or not outsized ownership relative to like the advance rate thing. Why we talk about like advance rate is one part of the game, but kind of a much smaller part than many people talk about. It's like Josh Jacobs was a 50% advance rate player, but then you even wanted AJ Dillon was a horrible advance rate. He was a horrible pick. You probably took him over Jalen Hurts. He was going in the 6th round. And you're taking him over Jalen Hurts. And so these guys, McKinnon, Dillon, Osborne, all these guys who I didn't really, McKinnon I thought was a good pick, but like the prices on Dillon, Osborne, these off the wall guys that didn't help you all year, they now become like huge pieces of your playoff run. Even if KJ Osborne doesn't do anything ever again, or frankly, AJ Dillon, it's like they did their job. So it's such an important thing that's going to be interesting to talk about, in a month or 2 months or whatever.
I want to hit this comment real quick. Ross says, imagine needing Aaron Jones to score that TD to advance a Jamar team only for Jones to trip over himself at the end. So that happened to me. We were sharing some teams, and I told you I had a Mahomes and Brady team. A Mahomes and Burrow team with a T. Higgins, Jamar Chase double. And if Aaron Jones scores that touchdown, that team advances. And that team was sick. Like that team was like nasty. And if he scores that touchdown, that team advances. And I was just like, I saw him just go down at the one. I'm like, they're not going to run it again. They're just going to kneel it. And I'm just like, oh my God. So me and the overbetters were both just sitting there in agony over that play.
Yes.
So I can feel that pain. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, it's more tough when it's on the Monday night game too, because you're just so dead. It's a tough sweat, but we got teams through, right? What we need to
100%.
focus on is the positive. We got teams through. I have 25 amongst the various tournaments. I have 25 tickets to try to get to week 17. I know other people have more, other people have less.
Yep.
I saw that a lot of the bros that are all about the 8.33% player exposure had a rough weekend. Just saying. The ones that didn't take player stands here and there, their advance rate seems to be a little off onto week 16.
It's an interesting idea to look. I want to look back at some, not just like the results data of who advanced, etc., but like how player scoring and stuff like that can work in regards to what you're saying with like taking player stands or drafting 8% of everybody, because you draft 8% of everybody. That theoretically helps you advance. It lowers the risk, right? It raises your floor of advancing teams, and only slightly lowers your ceiling on advancing teams. But once you get to the playoffs, you're spread really thin, right? You don't have anything in particular to root for. You're going to get a couple of probably of the Zays of the world, but even then, like sometimes, like I have some of my highest drafted players from the regular season that were not even on playoff teams. You know what I mean? The variance can be crazy. And so if I didn't have, like, if Zay Jones wasn't one of my highest owned wide receivers, I don't know if I'd be sitting here. Like I would be sitting here, but it would be a very different, it might be hammered, pissed off. But you know what I mean? Like if I didn't draft more Zay teams, who knows if they get through here? But Zay was one of my late round guys and I got lucky. You know what I mean? Like I drafted more McKinnon than a lot of other late round guys. If I hadn't done that, who knows? I don't know if I have any teams. So it's definitely a balancing act. I understand diversification, but I also think like I feel stronger about making sure you're getting over on some of the right guys, I think.
Absolutely. And I think what gets lost in the sauce on this discussion is, well, what's over 8%? And people like automatically go to like 50 or 60% as like what people are thinking. It's like, no, I can have 18, 19, 20% Zay Jones and you feel great about it.
Right. That's what I did.
And all you're doing is like
20.
Minusing off Jarvis Landry. You're like, all right, I'm just not going to draft Jarvis Landry instead, right? So that just jumps you up to 16%. If you're, balancing exposures, if you just X a guy off here and there, then that's how you can do it. So
I was gonna propose. We got quite a lot of comments and good comments and people posting some teams. We hit some of these comments and then we dive into your big dog team to kick us off with some of you and I's teams, if that works for you. I was just going to add also, you mentioned, what'd you say, like 25 teams or something like that? I have 18 total teams left between the two sites. My big thing this week was DK went fine. In particular, my two high stakes teams advanced. So that's like, I'm basically, I'm like almost, making money just from making the semifinals in those. But I didn't do a ton of puppies. Like really hardly at all, like maybe like 25 total across all the puppies, something like that. So I have one left and I feel fine about that. But like I got so burnt out drafting, I didn't do rookies and sophomores. I didn't do backyard best ball. I didn't do a lot of that stuff. And so I have like somewhat regrets, but I know you've talked about it. I think I should have dumped a few more, even if I just forego the puppies, into an extra big dog or two, or into, something like that, because like seeing some of my good teams get through. I have 4 BBM teams left, and like seeing some of them, like, man, if I just had some permutations and the structure that I like in those higher dollars, smaller field ones, I think that was my big mistake. But I'm 18 teams. Give me one of those babies into next week, and I really won't care too much either way.
Yeah, I mean, we were having this discussion in the Discord earlier today, a little bit, and it's something we're gonna have in the off season as well. We keep saying that, but there's a lot of discussions to be had in the off season. But for me, I do think that I am gonna look at how I'm spreading my money across teams. It's not gonna reduce my buy-in. I'll probably go up in buy-ins maybe, but I do want more higher stakes teams. I only did 2 big dog teams this year, and that's $500. It's like it's a healthy investment just to do 2 big dog teams, right? But if with the amount of puppies I did a little more than you. Like I advanced 6 puppy 1 teams and a couple throughout the other puppies. And it's like, well, I still want to do some puppies here and there, but maybe I limit the amount that I'm doing. If I decide I want to do 15 puppies per, release of that, and I
Mhm.
want to focus on doing the 333, which I didn't do on DK. I'm jealous you did that. I didn't do it. Do some more big dogs, maybe hit one of those, or was it like Dalmatians or whatever the
Yeah,
hell
right,
they
right.
had,
Bulldog. Yeah.
bulldogs. Yeah. So that's the stuff that I'm looking at. Like I want to do more higher stuff. And it's all depends on what you can afford to do, what you're comfortable doing. But for me, I'm really enjoying the sweat of the big dog team, to be
Yeah.
perfectly honest. Like it's
Same.
it's easier to sweat it too.
It's so much easier to sweat it. The advancement structures are like, you just feel so live, like with a very imperfect team. Like neither of my teams that are moved on into the semis are like awesome, and one has Cup Andrews are my first two picks on the one team, and it has Jalen Hurts now, so probably dead. But like you can be very imperfect and still make some good money. Now, like you said, the flip side is you could of course just get wiped out through variance in the regular season, right? Because you don't have a ton of those teams, you only have a handful. But I'm okay. Like that's how I like to play. Like if I return 0 on any best ball thing I put into play, that's how I'm cool playing. And so I just think it's going to be something that it's something that's not really covered enough, and it's because it's very personal. Like for me, for you and I, we're on that same page. Like I would rather dump some of the puppies for a couple big dogs or something like that, right? Any form of just slightly more expensive with the structure that we prefer. Other people would be like, dude, I realize now I just need to get as many bullets as I can. Give me all the puppies, right? Give me all the Dalmatians. Give me all the Pomeranians. Give me the $3 on DraftKings. Give me all of them because I want to pump as much volume through as I can get and just, give me as many shots on goal. And I think that also, right? Eagles is like awesome at that. Shout out Eagles on Twitter. That's what he's best at. It's just firing all these low stakes volume. That's not it's not how my brain works, and it's not how my fingers probably wouldn't work by the end of the summer. I just can't do that. So I think it's just up to each person. And that's been a big lesson for me so far, for sure.
And it kind of almost translates to our DFS brains, right? Where like you're a single entry guy, so you're looking at maximizing off of limited, and I've become more of a single entry guy, but I still like to MME a little bit here and there. So my brain's already like focusing on that for my next best ball season.
Yeah.
So like you can kind of see the correlation between the way that you play that game versus how you're going to be playing best ball. So for me, that's what I'm definitely going to. Let's hit some of the comments that we got going on. LeBron James in the chat. He got 17 of 89 underdog teams to the semis, which I would normally congratulate you for, but you're LeBron James. Why aren't you playing more volume? You should have way more. You have enough money to play max every tournament out and just hand your phone off to people and be like, here, pick guys and make it through. So
100%. Andrew asks, how many DK $5? I assume the $5 milli is what you're talking about. And I have 5 left in the $5 milli.
4, but 3 are Hurts teams.
I haven't gone through to see exactly how much Hurts I have on DraftKings out of my 12 or whatever teams that's left, but it's a lot. I know that. If Hurts doesn't play DraftKings, I'm going to be drawn to just a handful of teams, I think.
What a sweat that's going to be this weekend, too.
Sweating fucking injury reports every day for the Eagles.
Yeah,
this is not what I thought I would be doing, by closing in on my mid-30s. If you told me when I was a kid. Brooklyn asks, do you think Jalen Hurts teams will be put in the same pod, or will it be totally random? It will be totally random. And I can show, Rob and I can probably show you some. I also went through just 2, mainly because I have 2 BBM teams I'm mostly interested in. I went through each of them and looked at all the teams. One pod has, I believe, 8 Jalen Hurts teams in it, which I do not have Hurts on either of these 2 particular teams. The other one, there's only 2 out of 16 Hurts teams. And of course, that's the team I think is the livest. And so I'm not getting any favors in that pod. There's more Lamar teams in one of my pods than Jalen Hurts teams.
So, it is crazy how it goes sometimes. We're going to get into that on this big dog shortly. But yeah, it's crazy. It is variance. I had this argument yesterday about like someone was in me and Dan Box mentions about like they should have it as one big group and it's like a cut line type of deal. I'm like, that would suck at the end. Like we've talked about it on this before where, yeah, let's have everybody have the same team with like maybe a one-off here and there. Great. That's a lot of fun to sweat week 17. No, they do it mostly the right way. Maybe there's a way to improve. There's always some sort of way to improve things here and there. But for the most part, this is way better than that alternative, in my opinion.
100%. I mean, the goal isn't it to be completely fair to the teams that score the best in the 15, 16, 17, like cumulatively. That's not the game, right?
Right.
The actual game of NFL football isn't perfectly fair either, right? There's advantages to winning a coin toss in overtime. There's advantages to, bullshit variance, pass interference doesn't go your way, whatever. The game having this amount of variance is good because it makes the sweat more, right? You of course want it to be reasonably fair, and it is. It's fair in that it's random for everybody. And sometimes you're gonna, I think you said this last show, sometimes you're gonna come out on the short end of the stick, right? You got that 160-point team on underdog this week that didn't get in that would have won a bunch of your other pods. But then like I got like a 142-point team through this week that wouldn't have won like hardly any of my pods. So like it probably works itself out in the end. And like you said, think about if it was that cumulative, like all the way out throughout the course of the playoffs, every team would just be okay. If Zay, Osborne, McKinnon, Justin Jefferson, whatever, Ramondre, and one of the elite quarterbacks, by the time we got to week 17, the crossover would just be everybody who had good weeks 15 and 16. We're already going to get that, but without the randomness of the pods, there would be no like variance in that. How do you sneak this low owned guy through? You like almost can't in that other format versus the pods. You can get a little lucky, right? And that's the whole point of the game.
Yeah, I just think it makes it more fun. Like that week 17 sweat would just be so freaking boring. It's like, we all have Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, like every wide receiver. Oh, but I have, Gardner Minshew, the one Gardner Minshew team, or the one who's an obscure wide receiver, the one Sammy Watkins team, and now he's on Baltimore. Maybe he does something week 17. Like, come on. No, I want my Mahomes team with Travis Kelce going up against your Burrow team with Jamar Chase. And let's see who has the better matchup. Let's see who actually can take this down. My squad versus your squad. Now there's always overlap, of course, but we saw it last year. It's not crazy overlap. Even the most owned player was 60% at tight end with Mark Andrews or something like that. Which is a high number, but whatever.
But beyond him, it wasn't that bad. I don't know. Cup and JT were in Debo were like kind of up there, but like it was really just Andrews that had like crazy, like nobody else was really even more than like 25%, which made it really fun. You know what I mean? You could get there in a lot of different ways last year. And I think it'll be even crazier this year because like you said, the guys that you need in this first week of the playoffs are not going to be the guys you need in week 16, but they weren't the guys you needed in the regular season either. So we're like compounding a bunch of crazy variants on the guys you want to have on your teams. And by week 17, it's like, well, it was really just Jacobs, Tyreek, Pollard were the three highest advance rate players, I think. And like, they're all fine, but they're not the reasons why you won your pod so far. And so the more variance we get to that is like Tony Pollard could be low owned in the final for all we know.
Yeah.
Like, and then you would have said that 2 weeks ago, right? I mean, I'm not even seeing that much Josh Jacobs in my pods at first glance. And he was a 50% advance rate player. And he was like, whatever, fine last week, scored like 10 points or something.
Right. Jonathan's asking how many Burrow, Chase, Higgins stacks survived. I don't think that I got any in BBM, but I do have one in one of the tournaments. I can't remember which tournament specifically. I need to go through and label some of them and just like redo that. But I did get one Burrow double stack with Chase and Higgins through to something. I'm not sure if you did.
Nope. None for me. I don't even think I have any. Again, I haven't gone through all my DraftKings teams.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something on there with those guys, but maybe like one Burrow. Like it's just so consolidated to Hurts, Lawrence, Mahomes, Tua, And then some shitty guys, Daniel Jones and Mac Jones, Davis Mills, the guys that have just been along for the ride. But it's so hyper focused. Everything is just Hurts, Mahomes, Tua, Tyreek, a dash of Kirk Cousins here and there.
Yeah. Gerardo says that Algier is going to break everything.
I hope so. He's on my best team.
He's on some of my teams. He was one of the guys I did draft a lot towards the end of the rounds when we were doing best ball teams. I don't remember how much I got through of him, but I know I was drafting him. So he's a fun one. He's a fun one to be one of the guys to break things this year.
Another great example of a guy who was like, did he kind of help your regular season team? Sure, I get, a couple double-digit point games, but nothing special. But now Caleb Huntley's out, right? They cut Damian Williams, but that's, it's not like he's been around for a long time. But it's really just him and CPAT now. Mm-hmm. It is a good run game. We hate the offense for Pitts and London and everything, but it is a good running game. He's been really good on the ground this year in the amount of touches that he's getting. If he pulled the Rashad Penny here down the stretch, scored 20 points every game of the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised at all. So he's a fun guy to have.
Yeah. Billy Joe says that 3 of his 4 remaining BBM teams were drafted in May. I should have done more May drafting. Now, sometimes we do that and we're overreacting to this year's results. And like I was inverted. I think almost all of his teams that advanced in BBM were from May. But there's others. If you go through, they're like, oh, all my teams from August advance, or I had a lot of July teams advance. Don't overreact. Look at it, understand why they are advancing, but don't overreact to that, because that could change for you next year if you do the same draft method, for sure. So
I would add, I do feel like the kind of barbell thing, which has become a little bit kind of cliche now. I haven't seen a bunch of people saying, yeah, dude, my late June drafts are where I just crushed everybody. True. It's been a lot of May and then like August stuff. And so again, like you said, tangential and not anything like we can draw whatever we want from just about any data set, really, if we tried hard enough. But I do think that I feel a little bit more confident in it without having dug into it, just from everything I'm seeing from everybody. Because like you said, yeah, Paul, one of the best drafters out there, all his best teams are from like the first few days of the schedule release or whatever. And then some other people that I do respect were like, I got some really good teams from like late August. And so it's like, I haven't seen anybody that was like, yeah, dude, June 27th, I just crushed everybody in best ball, because it was just like all the sickos all drafting together versus the 2 barbell ends.
Yeah. Do we want to get into this big dog team?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. I'm going to present my screen real quick and
while you're doing that, Goose is asking, did the advancing teams disappear? Yes. So the process for DraftKings is they take your teams that moved on, they convert them into contest tickets. And you'll see that in the upper right-hand corner underneath your username, the number of tickets that you have. You click into there and you can see it'll say generic tickets, all the different advancements. They have to then create all the pods, and then they will automatically put your teams into those pods. So once they do that, they'll show up into your upcoming lineups.
All right, so I have this big dog team pulled up, and we're going to go through each player real quick, and I'm going to give you some stats on them based on what's in the pod. And immediately you get scared, right? Because you look and you see it's a Jalen Hurts team, and you're like, oh, probably dead, right? Probably a dead Jalen Hurts team. Well, I would think so too, but when you start listening to some of these things I'm going to say about this team, you're going to be like, oh my God. So there is only one other Jalen Hurts team in this pod.
Real quick,
right now.
How many teams are in the semifinals of the big dog, and how many advance?
So it's 8 in the semifinals and 2 teams advance.
Okay.
So you have a 25% advance rate theoretically based on that. However, like I just said, there's one other Jalen Hurts team. That other Jalen Hurts team, their second quarterback is Kyler. So we're probably talking 7 teams are live in this right now, right? Based on Kyler being the other quarterback.
If we assume Hurts is out, yeah, I think it's still a little up in the air, but that would be good for you, right? If he plays,
I think it's good either way.
Yeah.
Obviously I'd rather have Hurts than not have Hurts. If there's only one other team, then it's still an edge, like having that Jalen Hurts edge. But let's look at the other quarterbacks. The other one is Ryan Tannehill. Nothing great, but we're the only team that has him. Also, this is me and Pete Overzet's team. Just
he also may not play, but
they've already confirmed that he's supposed to play based
Okay.
on verbiage from Mike Vrabel. But again, we've seen this before.
Yeah.
The other
He did come back. He came back though this week, right? He got hurt and came back. Yeah.
Yeah. The other one is Zach Wilson. Nobody likes Zach Wilson. But again, he's coming. He's playing on a short week against Jacksonville. You put the stats up earlier today. Jacksonville, one of the worst pass defenses in the league. Coming off a short week, they have Garrett Wilson. They have Elijah Moore.
Corey Davis is going to be back.
Did he look great last week? No, but he looked better.
Mm-hmm.
He did look better. So that is, I'm not as worried about the quarterback position as I was before. It still sucks. I still would prefer to have Hurts. I'm not going to sit here and try to
cope.
Ross. Yeah. Like over that. It's the tougher spot on the team, but let's start talking about some of these other players. So Leonard Fournette hasn't been great, right? Like he hasn't been particularly perfect, but he still gets volume. We are the only team in the pod that has Leonard Fournette. Okay. Breece Hall, we're just going to X out. He's gone. The next player is Ramondre Stevenson. How many other teams do you think in this 8-team pod have Ramondre Stevenson?
Sorry, my dogs were barking. So I went on mute. Shocker. And I know it's really surprising that the dogs are barking in the background. How many have Ramondre out of 8? I mean, you would think it would be a lot, but context clues are telling me it's two total.
We are the only team that has Ramondre Stevenson in the pod.
What?
We are the only team with a Ramondre. Next player, Josh Jacobs. How many players do you think in this 8-team pod have Josh Jacobs?
3.
We are the only team with Josh Jacobs in this pod. So we are the only team with Fournette, Stevenson, and Jacobs. Kenneth Walker didn't practice today because of an ankle, right? But, I mean, he could still play. It could be a nothing burger.
If you say you're the only team with Ken Walker, I'm going to throw something.
Do you want to guess how many players?
No, you're the only team.
We are the only team with Kenneth Walker in this pod.
Those are the 3 best running backs, the 3 best regular season running back picks in existence. They were the 3 best, and you're the only team with them in a group of 8.
In the group of 8, we're the only ones that have Fournette, the only ones that have Stevenson, the only one that have Jacobs, and the only one that has Kenneth Walker. Okay? We're going to go scroll down to the wide receiver position. CeeDee Lamb was our number 1 pick on this team. How many people do you think have him in this pod?
You.
We are the only team with CeeDee Lamb in this pod.
That one at least can make some sense. The other 3 is that's total nonsense.
Yeah. How about AJ Brown? Do you want to guess on that one, or you just want me to say it?
No, got to be multiple. Got to be multiple on AJ Brown. You might be the only of the rest of these guys, but got to be multiple on AJ Brown at least.
We're the only team with AJ Brown in this pod. Jerry Jeudy.
I'm done with this game. I'm done with this game.
Jerry Jeudy, only team with Jerry Jeudy. We finally get to a multiple. MVS. There's one other team with MVS.
Of all people,
of all 8
people to have the one player that there's multiple, it's fucking MVS, who I ran a lap around my house because he caught a fucking 6-yard touchdown the other day and scored 10 fantasy points. Like that felt like a celebratory event.
Treylon Burks, only team with Treylon Burks in the pod. McCole Hardman. There are actually 2 other teams with McCole Hardman in this pod. One of them also has MVS, so it's the same team that has both of those guys. Alec Pierce. We're the only team with Alec Pierce in this pod. Tight end. Here's one of our other big dupe guys, Gerald Everett. 2 other teams have Gerald Everett. Mike Gesicki. We're the only team with Mike Gesicki, which makes sense. Like he's not great. Here is a tight end stat for you, though. You want to know how many teams have Kelsey, Kittle, or Waller in this pod?
Please not 0.
0.
Wow.
Not one team in this pod has Travis Kelsey, George Kittle, or Darren Waller. There is one Lamar Andrews stack in this pod, which is very different. Like if I was that guy, I'd be pretty excited about that.
Hayden doesn't think Lamar's going to play, so that'll be interesting. He's another one to monitor along with Hurts, I think, and Tannehill. I guess a lot of quarterbacks to monitor this week.
Then even better for me if he doesn't play.
Yeah,
because I don't remember who the guy's second.
I agree with this. You made a song about Rudman, and then you got thrown into the easiest big dog semifinal pod of all time. Nobody has any good players. Who the fuck is on these other teams?
I mean, look, it still goes that you guys want to see some. Do you want me to see if I can pull them up?
Yeah.
All right, we'll look through some of them. So Mahomes and Fields. This is the team I think I'm the most scared of. Like,
oh Lord,
this team's loaded.
That looks good. That looks good.
Mahomes, Fields, Henry, Barkley, Michael Carter, Khalil Herbert, Jerick McKinnon. Wide receiver falls apart a little bit. Deontay Johnson, Elijah Moore, Devonta Smith, MVS, Russell Gage, Tyler Boyd.
Gage was another guy when I was saying like the guys who were stoned. He's the AJ Dillon of wide receivers. Mm-hmm. He's the AJ Dillon of wide receivers. He was so exorbitantly priced because people thought Godwin was going to miss time. People were still drafting him in 7th round, Russell Gage or whatever. Like, what the fuck are we doing here? Does absolutely nothing all year. Like I said, I think when he fell, it was fine. When people finally came to their senses, he was fine at that cost, but still did nothing all year. Then, bam, 2 tutties. Week 15. It was like if you sucked all year and you were overdrafted, you smashed in week 15.
So just to wrap up their wide receivers, McCole Hardman, Kendrick Bourne, Eric's favorite player, Uncle Velus Jones over in Chicago.
He's on my best team too. Good for this
tight
guy.
End, Kyle Pitts, dead.
Oh.
Noah Fant.
There's so like that team there's more Kyle Pitts. There's more Kyle Pitts teams than Travis Kelce teams in your big dog group. That's amazing.
The next one is the Kyler Jalen Hurts team.
Najee.
It's Najee, Miles Sanders, James Cook, Naheem Hines, McKinnon, D'Ernest. Devontae Adams is going to pop up a lot on this list. You're going to see him in this pod a lot. DJ Moore, Jalen Waddle, Christian Kirk, Christian Watson are some of the guys. Gallup, Zach Ertz, Gerald Everett, Robert Tonyan. Right? So, like, I don't know if everyone wants to go through every single team, but Josh Allen,
just scroll them really quick.
Yeah. I feel bad for the audio listeners, though. You know, Etienne, Dobbins, Pierce, Gainwell, Herbert, Devontae Adams again, Debo.
18 times.
Yeah.
We don't need to read 100 and something players, but it's super interesting. This is such a kind of fun exercise because it shows when people are like, these pods are so random, this sucks or whatever. It's like, but this is how it can work out in your favor. You know what I mean? Like nobody has a lot of the good players. We talked about this a ton, right? When we talk about leverage and all that kind of stuff for week 17, because people are always like, oh, but what if you're the only guy that has Najee Harris in week 17? It's like, who gives a fuck? Because he can't win it for you anyway. You have the exact opposite scenario. You have all the guys. Now, it's a little variance that you're the only team with a lot of these guys, but it is what it is. Ken Walker didn't really do anything, right? Josh Jacobs didn't really do anything. Ramondre did. So he's the really surprising one. But like, who knows, dude? We could show up to week 17 and when Josh Jacobs isn't that popular because he didn't do shit maybe he doesn't do anything in the playoffs. Same thing for Ken Walker. That can happen. And those are the guys you want, right? Ken Walker at low ownership. Mm-hmm. That's a good, a 10th round Ken Walker is a real, because he can pop for 30 on any given week. It's those guys. That's why we always talk about Gabe, and I'm not sure the MVS qualifies for this anymore, but those kinds of guys, right? Get me those guys at low ownership into these final rounds, not the guys that can't really do anything.
Yeah. So I thought that this pod was interesting because when the Jalen Hurts news broke, I was devastated. I'm like, we're going to lose this team. It was so much fun to sweat all year. And then I started poking around a little bit later today and I was messaging Pete. I'm like, dude, like we're in good shape for having a Jalen Hurts team in the big dog. We couldn't ask for a better situation than what we have. Now we could still finish last based on what we have, but hell, who cares? We have a shot at getting one of these top 2 spots easily. Josh Jacobs pops off. We're in great shape. Ramondre could definitely pop off again.
Oh yeah,
right. Like he was supposed to be hurt this last week, and he looked fine.
I didn't think he was going to play. I didn't think he was going to play, and the dude went for 150 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah,
he's crazy.
So, yeah, I feel real good about that big dog pod, and we might even get off to a hot start if Zach Wilson gets me 22 points Thursday night, we're off to the races at that point.
Definitely.
I'm fine with that. Even if Hurts plays, if I get 20 or 22
from
Zach Wilson.
That's actually what happened for Pete and I in, again, that Overzet guy. He's the lucky rabbit's foot of Spike Week, apparently. But that's what happened for Pete and I in the final last year. Now, Burrow, for anyone that doesn't recall, in week 17 of last year, Burrow was the QB1, and he really only scored like 30, like low 30s. So it wasn't like week 15 where, like, God, if you didn't have 35 at quarterback, you were losing because like 5 guys did it. It was a little bit lower scoring week. Our quarterbacks were Mac Jones and Dak, and Mac came out and threw 4 touchdowns and scored like 20. And Dak, I think, ended up beating him out, but like just barely. And it was like same thing as us. Dak had an afternoon game, the infamous Cowboys Cardinals game that everybody was stacking in week 17 that fucking sucked. Yeah. But you get that floor, man. Like, get that floor, Zach Wilson. It's like you can breathe. You're like, all right, now I don't need Hurts to play. I can still win. It's like, do you want 35? Sure. But if you get, like you said, I mean, get like 2. I have teams mostly on DraftKings that use Tua. Tua scored 18 points. Even on a week where a bunch of guys scored 35, 40, if you have good stuff around a 20-point quarterback score, you can still win, especially in this round, right, where you don't need to beat 500 people or whatever.
And if I have 3 of those running backs pop off for 18 to 30, ball game, right?
Yep.
Like we're advancing. Most likely, the wide receivers are fine enough. AJ Brown's going to be fine with Minshew at quarterback. Minshew, we know, likes to sling it. I'm not worried at all about like the receivers.
People were calling for Minshew. Isn't this funny? Last year, like probably at this time, people were calling for Minshew to start over Jalen Hurts. Now Jalen Hurts is the MVP front runner. I know it's switched because of the injury with him and Mahomes, but he was basically the MVP front runner. And people are like, can the Eagles pass catchers still do it without Jalen Hurts? Like, you were probably the guy last year that was like, bench that loser Hurts, put Minshew in. So like, of course they can be fine with Minshew. It's not, the offense isn't going to be quite as good all around, but it doesn't mean the skill guys can't eat still with Minshew.
Yeah, I like that. Antonio Gibson was hitting only one as we were doing the thing.
A CD is very loaned. That is true, and he has him. He's a good guy. He's a good guy to have. That we talked through in that vein of the elite wide receiver that just still has a crazy upside. He's been awesome. He's just victim of circumstance around all the other superstars.
Definitely. But it's exciting to have him in that pod. I forget who Dallas is playing this week already. I haven't really started diving in. Oh, they got the Eagles.
Philly.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got the Eagles. If we all lose, it'll be Spite Week. That's a good comment.
Spite Week, yes.
So that was like my main team that I wanted to talk about. I have some BBM teams. I don't know if we really want to go through all of those. Do you have some teams that you want to go through?
I'll just pull up one because it's kind of like almost not a team you would typically expect, but I'm pretty it's definitely my team I'm most excited for. It's the team I was sweating the most last week. Really quick, I wanted to hit Christian's question. How do you check when your teams were drafted in DK? Within DraftKings on their site or in their app or anything, you cannot. If you are a Spike Week subscriber and you upload your DraftKings teams, there's any team. I'll just go ahead and pull up my teams and I can physically show you what it looks like on the Spike Week side. But if you go in and have your teams uploaded to you see Draft IQ here and go to our lineups page, this obviously is currently underdog. But if I were to switch over to DraftKings, which I will, you see it has all this kind of metadata we pull in about your team. So the structure, but you see here when it was drafted. And for some people have asked this. So if you upload your teams, you see I have uploaded or I had uploaded my first round playoff teams here. So you see I had 32 BBM teams. There's a little filter that we had to add here, current versus 2022. So the current will always be, your latest upload, which during these playoff weeks, it's kind of like a new slate, basically, that we have to treat it as. But if you want to go back and look at all of your regular season teams, you can always click 2022 and go back. And we're doing that so that you can see, next year you'll be able to see your 2022 teams, right? In 2024, you'll be able to see your 2023 teams, etc. I don't know. I wanted to go to underdog to show you the one team that I'm mostly sweating in BBM, and I think I got the opposite end of the stick in my in my pod. There were a couple teams that were just absolutely loaded. The best team I think that's in my pod does have Hurts and Derek Carr at quarterback. So if Hurts misses, it would actually really help this team, because then I wouldn't be, Carr can be fine, but I'm not worried about getting buried by Derek Carr. But this team is a Vikings double stack and a Dolphins double stack. So Cousins with Justin Jefferson, and of course the probably MVP of Week 15, KJ Osborne, or the co-MVP of Week 15. Probably the first time I used KJ Osborne's score all week. Borderline the first time I used Kirk Cousins' score, other than when Tua was hurt. But Cousins and Tua with Jefferson, Osborne, and then of course I have both the Dolphins wide receivers, Tyreek and Waddle. I'm just going to hit the wide receivers actually, because they're kind of interesting. Sutton might come back this week. I could really use that actually on multiple teams. I'm excited for this team a lot, also because of this guy I've mentioned probably way too many times now. But I know that Kittle and CMC popped off for San Francisco last week. But I think Ayuk is like a smash. He may not do it. That's just how it goes sometimes. But without Debo, Ayuk gets just as big of a boost as those other guys. And I'm really excited to have him like on a particularly good team. Josh Palmer, whatever, Uncle Valus, loser. But and then Waller and Everett.
Waller, you have real interesting.
Yeah, he caught the touchdown, which is really all he did this week. But I mean, that's the point. That's the whole point of like, get me that guy who can score, who's a good player at low ownership. So it's just like I know Valus, I wouldn't consider him really alive, but like everybody, if Sutton comes back, this whole team is fully healthy. Chubb did miss practice today, so I mean, I'm sure he's going to play, but it's like the running backs are kind of fun too, because they're lower. Like Travis Etienne was a fine pick this year, but not like a total smash. I want to get him to Week 17 against Houston so bad. Like, that's why I'm rooting. He's probably the biggest reason why I'm rooting for this team to get a reasonably low owned ETN against Houston in Week 17 would be awesome. I used to call him my guy Miles. I don't know. He's going to get a new nickname after shitting on all my fantasy teams last week. But to sneak Miles through, I feel good about sneaking Miles through. And then, Hunt is just always hoping for Chubb to miss. Spiller is useless. But then we talked about having Algier on this team, again, at reasonably low ownership. And I still believe in Donta Foreman, and he gets the Lions this week. And he can pop off. So it's just it's a really good, like, well-rounded, fully healthy team that I'm super excited for. Correlated, low ownership, right? Just everything that you could want. And so this is the one I'm sweating the most to get into, to see if we can get her into Week 17.
That was a Best Ball Mania team, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I do have one fun Best Ball Mania team. I'll bring it up real quick. So actually, I should probably move the thing over here. But this is a Best Ball Mania team. It is. Why is it not showing? What is going on here? Oh, I'm still sharing the wrong tab. So we're going to remove this tab, right? We're going to act like we've done this before, and we're going to present the right tab. But this is going to be a fun one to look at. So,
real quick, I think Colin was the person that replied to one of my tweets, or maybe a Spike Week tweet, that said, it finally paid off to be a Vikings like homer or a fan or something like that. Sorry, Colin, if it wasn't you, but somebody replied to a tweet that was like, I drafted like 40% KJ Osborne. It finally paid off to be, a total homer. But Colin says, he's a fan. He watches every game, and he's been telling his brother all year that Osborne is open a ton and Kirk never throws to him, which, I mean, in part is because the best wide receiver on the NFL is also out there and open on every play too. But he said, please, KJ, go off for these next 2 weeks. I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable. They have a pretty under the radar playoff schedule. They get the Giants this week, which is a good matchup, against their defense, and the Packers in Week 17, which is a totally fine matchup for anybody as well.
So this team, quarterbacks are Josh Allen and Matt Ryan. I mean, obviously, we love having Josh Allen. That's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Running backs,
These
Miles
are good.
Sanders, Tony Pollard, Ramondre, Tyler Algier. Like
Herbert back this week.
Herbert back. I mean, I like having Pollard. We weren't seeing a lot of Pollard's name floating around on teams. So that's Sanders Pollard matchup against each other. We get Ramondre, we get Tyler Algier. That's pretty fun.
Mhm.
Wide receivers. It's a double
Oh,
stack
my.
for Josh Allen. We have Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. We also have Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Drake London. Sky Moore's dead, of course, but Josh Palmer could do something. Nico Collins, if he ever comes back. But overall, the wide receivers could go nuclear.
Really good. Mm-hmm.
Right? And I don't think there's going to be a lot of Josh Allen teams that got through with the Diggs, Gabe Davis double stack.
Correct.
After the way that they played. So I love having the Josh Allen double. And I wasn't double stacking Josh Allen a lot at all. Usually it was one or the other, and that was about it. And my tight end is George Kittle and Mo Alley Cox, but it's Kittle. So the whole team, like, I feel like I'm solid everywhere on this team, right? Like, usually, like, we're looking at these teams, we're like, oh, this position's a little bit weak, this position's a little bit weak. But this BBM team, if we get the big explosion Buffalo game where Gabe Davis does what he does once every 40 games, apparently, and Stephon Diggs is just Stephon Diggs, and our running backs hit, I feel great. And we have other great one-off wide receivers. Like,
yep.
Yes, please let me get this team of all my teams for Best Ball Mania to the finals. That's the one I'll be sweating the most.
The Bills are really another good one because Josh Allen went nuts, but Diggs and Gabe both sucked. They didn't do anything.
Nothing.
Like, it's not even just like sometimes, like, we say they didn't do anything and they scored like 12, but like they both scored like 6 fantasy points. Like they were not even usable in your lineup, and there was a first and a 4th round pick. And so I agree. I have those two guys also on my 333 team on DraftKings, and probably a lot more of them advancing than I expect the field does. And I'm really excited for both Diggs and Gabe. I'm not. It's like the same. Everybody, the Gabe thing is funny or whatever. I'm not expecting anything from Gabe, frankly, at this point. But he's a living, breathing body playing every snap on a Josh Allen offense. Anything can happen. I would rather have him than the other guys that went around him in his range. Right? Would you rather have Allen Robinson who's on IR? Would you rather have Brandon Cooks, who's probably not going to play again, and those guys didn't do anything anyway?
Yeah.
One question: Would you rather have Terry McLaurin or Gabe Davis on your team right now?
I'd rather have Gabe Davis on my team right now.
I think the ceiling is right. Terry is always going to.
I like Terry McLaurin a lot more than other people too. I like McLaurin, but
just the offense. Heineke is just brutal.
Especially when we have to do, what is it? What is BBM? Is it 18? 16?
16, yeah.
1 out of 16?
1 out of 16.
I mean, specifically for pods like that, I'd much rather have Gabe Davis. Give me the guy that has a realistic shot at going for 160 and 2 touchdowns, on 4 catches.
Does it every year. Yeah. Did it this year.
Yeah.
Like, are we expecting it? Absolutely not. But like, can he? Yes, because he does it every year.
He's on the field all the time. He's got one of the best quarterbacks in the league, arm-wise. Like, give me Gabe Davis. I like McLaurin a lot. It's just like you said, we're worrying about Taylor Heineke. Who do the Bills have this week? Offhand.
Bears. The Bears.
Oh, baby.
We saw the Eagles played so bad on Sunday. Hurts was started 2 for 9. All he was dude, it looked like NFL Street. He would just take the pass and chuck it down the sideline into coverage. I know he has AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, so it's really not that bad. But it was I don't know, it doesn't have to be every play. It was like a 6-year-old playing Madden, just clicking Hail Mary on every single pass play. He was just throwing bomb after bomb. It was never working. He threw 2 picks. They wouldn't run the ball. They were an absolute mess. They played horrible. And Hurts scored 40. AJ Brown had 160 yards and Devonta Smith had like 120 yards. Like their offense is it's comparable to the Bills, right? So like same thing.
Yeah.
It just depends how many points Josh Allen wants to score. It's going to be totally up to him, and obviously little variance on who it goes to. But if you have Bills, even like Devin Singletary, James Cook, like if they popped up for a week that helped you, maybe more of the flex, definitely RB2, not necessarily RB1. But would anyone be surprised? They're facing the worst defense in the NFL.
So galaxy braining, because we can still galaxy brain and best ball. Do you think that with the Hurts injury, if he's out, and I know that the Bills aren't going to be sweating that by any means, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But we already know the Bills don't lay off the gas pedal when they're up for the most part, right? They still have 3 games left.
Correct.
Do you think that they try to get Josh Allen back in that MVP race by just letting him go nuclear for 3 straight games?
I would.
Right?
If I was the coach, I would, because the thing about it is it wasn't like Mahomes became the de facto leader in the clubhouse only because of the Hurts injury news, not because like they went to overtime with the Texans.
Yep.
Like Jerick McKinnon carried them, not Patrick Mahomes. And Mahomes was fine. He's Mahomes. But that wasn't like a feather in his cap last week. Whereas honestly, it was a little bit of a feather in Josh Allen's cap to go out in the bad weather, beat a good team. He played well. And now if he comes out and throws, score 6 touchdowns, he could take back over, because Mahomes has a fine match. Like he's going to do well against Seattle, but they'll at least put up a little resistance. They have a couple good players on defense. The Bears are like an XFL defense. It's free points for the opponent.
All right. Who are you most scared of this week? Because I posted in the Discord who I'm scared of. I do have some teams with them. I did find a few, but who are you scared of this week?
Easy, Derrick Henry.
Yeah,
not a fucking question.
Terrified. I am terrified of Derrick Henry this week. It is scary AF of what this dude might do to some of my best ball teams. And I'm not even like one of the guys that was like, you got to fade Derrick Henry. I was picking Derrick Henry here and there. I might have been a little under 8% on him. He might have been like a 6 or 5% guy for me. But I'm not anti Derrick Henry. So please don't punish me, Derrick. Like,
dude, don't punish me, bro.
I have not, flubbed your name in public. I've always been like, hey, I like Derrick Henry. Good guy, big guy, scary guy, really good at football. Do stuff like get your 100 and get a touchdown. That's fine. Just try not to break 20 points for me, please.
I mean, that's the easiest answer of all time. I don't have any Derrick Henry. I don't have any Derrick. I definitely don't have any Derrick Henry on underdog that advanced. I'm trying to just double check really super quickly on DraftKings, because I don't believe I got any of my none of my Derrick Henry teams got through. I actually had 6 Derrick Henry teams in the first round on underdog, but I just wasn't able to sneak any of them through. There was one I think I was tracking. If Goddard had played and done anything, I think I would have got that one Mahomes, no Kelsey obviously, but like Mahomes, MVS, Hardman, Derrick Henry. It had Javonte, so it's whatever. But like, it was really good team. Oh my God, it had. Listen to this. Did not advance. Derrick Henry, Patrick Mahomes, KJ Osborne, Zay Jones, and Noah Brown.
Didn't advance?
Did not advance.
That's bonkers. How does that happen?
Got second in the $25. Got second out of 12. The team in first had Algier, lost to Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones got me on Monday night, but he had Zay and Dotson. Both Dotson and Aaron Jones both made his lineup. Had them both on Monday night. And I took I had Hawkinson at tight end. But if Goddard plays and outscores Hawkinson by anything at all, we get a big dog Mahomes team through. But it is what it is. But that's a good example of holy shit. I hit the absolute nuts on. I mean, my 3 wide receivers are Noah Brown, KJ Osborne, and Zay Jones, and they combined for like 100, and it doesn't get through. But so no Derrick Henry for me. It's the easiest answer, like of all time, of who are you scared of? Him.
Well, the other guy apparently is Travis Kelce.
Yeah, because he's
based
underowned. He's 100% underowned
based
in anything
based
I've
on
seen.
not having him at all. Like it's
Yeah,
Travis Kelce too. Do you have did you go through your exposures for your remaining teams, at least on Underdog, and just kind of glance it and see who you had left at high percentages? Did anyone stick out to you?
yeah. Somehow Rashad Penny is on a lot of teams. That's not ideal.
Ooh.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know how that happened. But it's Miles Sanders again.
Yeah.
60% Miles Sanders. Jalen Waddle. It's always funny because my 4 highest owned players are 2 guys who are either hurt or inactive on Sundays, Rashad Penny and Albert O. And then but Miles Sanders, Jalen Waddle, AJ Brown, Drake London, Tyreek. So again, it's still Dolphins, Eagles.
Yep.
And Dolphins, Eagles have kind of been carrying me all year. It's pretty much still those guys. Justin Jefferson, and then we get to Jags, your Jags, Kirk and Zay. So
yep.
It's pretty hyper focused on those 3 offenses with a sprinkling of running backs kind of across the board.
So mine shows 18 teams because it doesn't show like how it breaks down on Underdog, where some of the before real drafting is considered different, like the big board stuff and all that. So of the 18 teams that it shows, AJ Brown at 61%, which we like. Ramondre at 55%, Mahomes at 50%, MVS at 50%, Kittle 44%, McCaffrey 38%. So I like my highest owned exposures. Trevor Lawrence is 33, Devonta 33, Christian Kirk 33, Albert 33%.
Brutal.
God damn it. Then I get into my Miami guys, which is Mostert, Tyreek, Garrett Wilson at 22%, Rashad White. Like I like other than the Albert O, I don't love that my second most owned quarterback, just particularly for this week, is Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
But it's a short week. Things can happen on a short week, on a Thursday short week. Who knows? Usually it's lower scoring, but maybe the Jets forget to play defense for a little bit and Trevor Lawrence torches them.
Yeah. And, I mean, if you have another guy with Lawrence that's hopefully decent, I think
that's the thing too. Like if it's Trevor Lawrence on my team, he's probably my second behind a Josh Allen, a Mahomes, a Hurts as well. Right. So at least,
or even with Fields or Tua or something where like, okay, maybe I'm using Fields this week and not Lawrence.
Exactly. So like, I'm okay with it, but yeah, the Alberto thing sucks. Like how did we allow that to happen? God damn Ukraine.
That's a yeah. The lesson that we can learn from that is if you can't pronounce his last name, you probably shouldn't draft him in the 12th round. I think is what we learned from that. No announcer can even announce his name, but pronounce his name. But I was going to ask one Jalen Hurts-esque question and one Trevor Lawrence / Jags-esque question, because for like thought experiment wise. Well, first, I hope people are taking into account just how bad this matchup is for the Jags. Yeah. The Jets defense is fucking unbelievable, particularly versus the pass. Those 2 outside corners, like Sauce is getting all the love, but it's not just Sauce. Both of the outside corners are just unreal. And so theoretically, that could fun a little more to Kirk and Ingram, excuse me. And so if you have those guys, I feel better than if I have if I need Zay or Marvin, because frankly, dude, Diggs and Gabe got the clamps. Like if Diggs is getting the clamps by these guys, like I'm sorry to tell you, Zay Jones is not going to go get open against these guys. So I do think if you're looking at your Jaguars teams like, oh, yes, I got all these Jaguars, I would start making contingency plans because the Jets defense is legit that good, in particular with the guys who probably helped you. I would hope I have another quarterback. However, would you rather have I'm going to do this question and also a similar Hurts question. Would you rather have Lawrence on the team? Obviously, he helped you get there in order to bank on a quarterback that's not very good. You talked about Zach Wilson. It could be Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, right? Daniel Jones, somebody like that. You that's your QB2 with Lawrence. Would you rather not have Lawrence and just like, okay, I'll deal with it without having Lawrence this round. I have an advantage in week 16, but Lawrence gets the Texans in week 17. Yeah. And they've been pushing back so much that game could be like the greatest bad team shootout of all time. Like, I mean, they're scoring points on everybody. The Texans are. And so would you rather not have him and just be like, okay, my week 16 is going to be better, or have him but rely upon a crappier quarterback in order to get Lawrence to week 17? Which would you prefer?
That's tough because, like you just said, that's week 17 matchup could set up to be Lions Seahawks.
It's the same
last
shit.
Year.
It's the same thing.
It's literally the same idea, right? I don't know. I guess I want to get Lawrence to week 17. I guess that's the play.
So let's go Daniel Jones is what you're saying.
Yeah. I'm lucky enough that a lot of my Lawrence teams, I was heavy on him. So, but I was also heavy on elite QB. So
right.
A lot of my Mahomes teams are Trevor Lawrence teams, or, unfortunately that Josh Allen team wasn't Trevor Lawrence team. That would have been nice.
Yep.
But yeah, like I'm lucky enough that if it's a Trevor Lawrence team, it is probably a Mahomes. Unfortunately, a Hurts, but that's what we're kind of looking at for me. But anyway, I can get Trevor Lawrence to week 17. Feels like it could be great.
And I think maybe the best way to do it is like Tua, where he can still have a big game. Like Tua can score 30 fantasy points or whatever, but you didn't spend like the totally right, because if you get Lawrence to week 17, but then you're saying, oh, I have Patrick Mahomes and I'm not using his score. I'm not saying you don't want Mahomes and Lawrence teams. My God, I would love to have Mahomes and Lawrence teams right now. But like if we get to go back and cherry pick the absolute perfect team I want to have moving forward, the Lawrence team is probably like that, where I'm like punting off that other QB as much as possible, but as much as possible to where I still get like a really high upside player, like Tua or Fields, really, I think would be probably the guys where you're like, they can score 25 plus for sure. I mean, they both have multiple times this year, but then I didn't spend the 4th or 5th round pick on the quarterback, right? So that's where I get my whoever, whatever pick you want to put in there.
I might have the perfect example for you in one of the puppies of what you're talking about. So I have a Trevor Lawrence team, but it is a Russell Wilson team.
Oh, that's interesting.
So the running backs are Christian McCaffrey, Ramondre, Algier, Jamal Williams, J.D. McKissick. That's what we're looking at there. Then we're looking at Tyreek, A.J. Brown, Cortland Sutton, Chris Godwin, Ayuk, Sky Moore, Zay, and Kendrick Bourne. And then tight end is strictly Dawson Knox because it has Rob Gronkowski on it and Albert O. But
two retired tight ends.
Basically, yeah. But I think that's the epitome of what you're talking about, right? Like if Denver's got, trying to think off the top of my head who Denver's got this week. Okay, that's fine. Like I'm fine with that. So if Russell can get 20 somehow against the Rams, then that's kind of the teams we're looking for. I only found that because I was looking through to see who my Trevor Lawrence teams were. Oh baby. I just got excited because I saw a Josh Allen, Joe Burrow team.
Was your desk moving up over there?
A little bit.
I saw the sound effects. I couldn't tell if the visual effects were coming along with it.
They were getting there.
All right, here's my final thought experiment that I was thinking about, because I say this because I was again only looking at my BBM teams. I have 4 that advance. 2 of them have Jalen Hurts. Okay. 1 I think is not dead if he doesn't play. I mean, probably dead because most teams are probably dead when you got to get first out of 16 and you lose your superstar quarterback, but technically not dead. But 2 of which I don't have Hurts, and I think they're probably my 2 best teams. Now, on DraftKings, I have like 50% or so, give or take, of Hurts advancing, and those teams would be dead as well without him. But I'm trying to think about this. Would you rather have advanced, let's just say that 50%, because that's about where I'm at, of my week 16 teams are Jalen Hurts. Would you rather he does not play and you punt off those 10 teams and give your other 10 teams greater chances of making it to week 17, right? So you're making your unloading your clip right? From 20 bullets to 10 bullets, but those bullets are supercharged, right? They're shotgun shells now. They're not, whatever. So would you rather that, or would you rather he plays and then all your teams are live? Which one would you rather have?
So that's a real interesting thought experiment, because I think it really depends what your stance was on how you drafted. So we're going to go back to Trevor Lawrence and Tua and stuff. When I drafted Jalen Hurts, a lot of my second quarterbacks were Tua or Lawrence, or I'm looking at one right now that the second quarterback is Fields, right? So I guess theoretically, from a wide scope, it would be I don't want Hurts to play, based on what they showed the advance rate was for him earlier on Underdog, which was like right around 25%. Might have even been a little higher, maybe a little lower. But we're talking about,
also, for added context, I'm assuming he's the highest owned quarterback in this round. Now,
yeah,
Lawrence is going to be really high up there. Mahomes will be there. It's not like he's not like the regular season Josh Jacobs. It's not going to be to that level of ownership, but I do suspect he's probably the highest out of all the quarterbacks.
I agree. I think his ownership is going to be the highest. So I think if you can get through that team and he's going to come back and play in week 17, then you're finding a way to pivot off of a lot of these Hurts teams. You're not going to be the only one that does it either. Like, we're not saying you're the only one that gets to advance the Jalen Hurts team, but it helps break up that, because if Hurts played this week, right, and he goes nuclear, he's Mark Andrews.
100%.
Right. So
because Lawrence isn't going to. Allen might, but he was so expensive, his advance rate can't get out of control. Yeah. Mahomes is a little bit similar to that in that he was just a little more expensive. He might be the only quarterback that goes nuts that wasn't a third round pick, and so he would just be crazy chalky in week 17. I think my answer, Antonio Gibson in the chat says, I'd rather have 0 Hurts. Well, yeah, me too.
Thanks, Antonio Gibson.
Unfortunately, I would have like almost 0 advancing team. I would not have advanced very many teams if I drafted 0 Jalen Hurts. I think my answer is I would prefer him to sit, because the more I've thought about it, it is going to be so goddamn hard to, again, thinking through BBM specifically, first out of 16, the math also changes when, your team is really good too, so the math doesn't technically change, but like people view it as, oh, well, I just have a 1 in 16 chance, right, to advance. It's like, yes, but like it's not like 1 out of 12 or 2 out of 12 in your regular season where, only one person has some of the good players, right? There's totally dead teams. There might be a dead team or two in your, that somehow got through with a Kyler and Lamar or something like that, right? Some fluky stuff happens, but generally speaking, these semifinal teams are all supercharged, man. Like, they're all good. Even the bad semifinals teams are really good teams. So I would love to cut my win expectation, or, double, triple my win expectation, if at all possible, on those, again, let's say 10 teams that don't have Jalen Hurts. And I think I'm willing to sacrifice the 10 teams to do so, because it's just so hard to even make it to week 17 that if I can do anything to increase that, I think I would like to do that. But I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer. It's a really tough question. And I've been thinking about it like all day, because it's literally my life. That's the thing I'm living right now, is like, do I want him to play or do I not? And I don't know.
I think overall, like, just from like, if you're just like saying in a broad statement, you have 28 teams, do you want Jalen Hurts to play or not? You would say, of course I don't want him to play, just based on what your ownership percentages should be, not knowing what the makeup of your teams are. For me, where I'm sweating a team that has Jalen Hurts, there's only 2 of us in the pod for the big dog that have them. For that one particular team, that would sway me to me wanting him to play this week. But overall, I think the right answer is you don't want him to play this week. Like,
right, like in DFS, there's a really chalky play. He gets hurt. Yeah. Would you? Of course, you don't want to have him. But on you 150 max, you went underweight that player. Let's just say.
Yeah.
You want him to get hurt. you don't want him to get hurt. That's clearly not what I meant. But when something happens, like what happened to JT this week, right? You played the 3 game slate on Saturday. You went underweight JT. You sacrificed a lot of teams. They're dead, but you have a lot of really all of a sudden super live, really high EV teams. I wanted to hit Anthony's question. Anthony
I was just reading that one because
it's a good question.
It's a good question.
Great question. Eric, I chatted with you in here in September and asked you about Justin Herbert. You said you didn't have much interest in him. Is it optimal to fill out the skill positions in your draft? Is what Anthony is asking. And then like backfill in with your QB later on in the draft, such as a Justin Fields or a Trevor Lawrence. 100% is the answer to this question. Yes. This is the structure. Like when people talk about structure, these are the kinds of structure questions, what Anthony is asking. And it's such a good question because you don't like stacking is important. Correlation is important. All this stuff is important, but there's almost nothing that you should ever force in a draft, including correlation, including stacking with your quarterback. It's actually why Herbert's cost and the Chargers cost are the best example of why I almost never ended up with any Chargers stacks, was because I'm not forcing that stack that everyone else is forcing at this elevated price only to have the same Charger stacks that everybody else does. And so I didn't go out of my way. I mean, I drafted a good clip of Mike Williams, but I didn't go out of my way to force Chargers into my teams, even though they're an awesome offense. I was really excited for the Chargers. It's just, I think you should, as you said, I talked a lot about in the offseason, like building backwards to frontwards on your teams. And this is a great example of doing so. You should never just say, oh, I took Mike Williams, I got to go get Justin Herbert. It's like, because you can look, if you would be so much better off now. It's easy revisionist history, but it's easy to say now, dude, if you have Mike Williams on team, even if you have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen or Austin Eckler or whatever, and you didn't reach on Herbert, and you got the quarterbacks that Anthony brings up, you have Fields and Lawrence on that team instead. Now you have the quarterbacks that were better values at the time. Even I think a lot of people thought that they were better values at the time. I know Rob did. I did. You picked a better pick, and you actually have multiple stacks now. You have a Charger stack on your team, plus a Jag stack, plus a Bear stack, right? And you can get those stacks without the quarterback. You don't have to have Justin Herbert to have exposure to the Chargers. The quarterback's the most replaceable part of a stack. So that's exactly why you should do, I'm not saying to draft late round quarterback, but I'm saying you don't have to always go out of your way within any one individual draft to say, I took Mike Williams, I got to go get Justin Herbert with my next pick. That's not how you should approach it.
No, that I agree with. I think I guess we're not cherry picking because I do think we were all interested in that Fields to a Lawrence range. Like, I think a lot of us were like, there's a gigantic drop off after that range.
Yes.
But again, I was interested in them as my QB2. Like that was always like my QB2 range. So in terms of drafting early quarterback, I still like drafting early quarterback, like in terms of getting guys with massive mega upside. And I didn't think Herbert had it on a consistent enough basis. Like that Hurts or Mahomes or Josh Allen we're going to do. Even Kyler Murray, right? Or Lamar. So like I like those guys better over Herbert. So that's sort of a player evaluation thing and team evaluation and whatever you want to call it. I'm going to be right on that sometimes. I'm going to be wrong on it. This year we were right. We were right on the Herbert thing.
But to add on to that, it also doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be, I was drafting Chargers wide receivers, but I wasn't taking Justin Herbert. That doesn't mean you have to fade elite quarterback though either.
Right.
Because you can take Patrick Mahomes on a team where you took Chargers wide receivers, right? It's not like the only path to stacking Mahomes was through Kelsey. There was Juju and there was Sky and there was MVS and there was Hardman and of course Kadarius Stoney that we all saw coming. There was a tons of you could draft Kyler, you could draft Hurts. You could draft Hurts on that's probably an awesome team to have right now if he plays. A Hurts, Devonta Goddard stack with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. That sounds pretty good, right about now. It's just, it doesn't always have to be. I think the whole point is like, you don't have to force that stack. Elite quarterback, I'm totally on the same page with. But you also don't have to force the right. Nothing is like this binary thing ever. And I think people try to view it as binary. Like I started out this team with Chargers, got to get Justin Herbert, or do I have to draft an elite quarterback, or do I have to punt quarterback? It's like the answer is like never one or the other.
No, I agree with. He just did the way he worded it was then go quarterback later on.
Yeah.
So that's why I just wanted to confirm that we were talking about like we still like the elite quarterbacks. Steven asked, what's everyone's most depressing injury this season? His is Breece Hall. Javonte Williams is the easy.
How long do you have?
Look, Javonte Williams is my easy answer on this one. I'm dragging some Javonte teams to week 16. In remembrance of what could have been this year.
I think mine is probably Javonte too, just because of the impact of the running back positions. Would be easy to say Trey Lance for the brand, probably, and that did suck because we never got to see what he could do. I guess we never got to see what Javonte could do either. But Jesus, Javonte, Lance, Pitts, Reese, pick a good name. Like I said, how long do you have? Because a lot of the really fun, exciting young players that I like to draft got hurt, but Javonte is probably the right answer.
I was thinking about this the other day when I was looking at some DFS stuff, but I scrolled by Chase Edmonds' name, and if you had the little tidbit before the season started, right? There's two guys that this really could equate to heavily. One is Chase Edmonds. Like if I told you Chase Edmonds is going to be one of the Denver Broncos running backs. Right? What would you like? That would change your thought process overall, probably on maybe even the Dolphins, because maybe you'd be like, oh,
Mostert. My first take was Mostert. I'm like, I want all Mostert. Then that was my first snap take.
But I'd also be worried about the passing game because, like, I thought Chase Edmonds was going to help elevate that passing game. So I'd be like, oh, is Tyreek and Jalen Waddle not doing as well because are they unloading pieces because they suck? Like, right? And Denver, it's like, well, someone definitely went down for them to get Chase Edmonds. Was it Javonte? And if they're acquiring Chase Edmonds, they must be doing well. So the passing game must be doing well, right? Like these are some of the things we would have done. The other one is Baker to LA. That would have been a little bit easier. Yeah. Right. You'd have been like, well, this team's dust. We're not drafting any Rams now.
That one I would really like to know because I would love to turn all those Cooper Kupp teams into Justin Jefferson teams right about now.
Yeah.
My Lord.
I mean, we did that somewhat with McCaffrey over JT. At least I did. I'm glad that I took that take. I had a few arguments about the CMC versus JT thing, and it all came down to injury. Everyone's like, CMC gets injured all the time. Jonathan Taylor is a human running back. He's going to also get injured. I didn't want him to get injured this year. It's not what I'm looking for. But we were also worried about that offense. I still would have rather CMC on a Panthers team than Jonathan Taylor on that Matt Ryan
on this Colts
team.
Oof.
Right? So there's just some like interesting games to play when you look at players that are moving teams throughout the year.
Steven says I was bragging about his value on Chase Edmonds in a spike week draft in the offseason.
Same.
The good old this is the great example of closing line value or ADP value, and this is the Julio Jones victory lap ADP. Everybody said you got to take Julio. He's going to skyrocket when he signs, bro. I'm like, do I win with closing line value or do I win with fantasy points? Because I prefer the fantasy points. And this 40-year-old wide receiver, shocker, didn't do shit all season long. And it's like, I'm not saying that you're saying this, Steven, but it just reminded me of the Julio thing where it's like, it sets off our whatever, the stuff that's going on in our brain. We're like, oh my God, I just got that guy 20 picks past ADP, or oh my God, I drafted that guy, Dameon Pierce. I was drafting 17th round Dameon Pierce. And look, he's a 7th round pick or whatever. It's like, we're going to get to week 17 and nobody's even going to remember Dameon Pierce because he ended up not really, he helped you advance, but ended up not really doing anything. It's just funny that this game is so bizarre, man. Like, you think you're doing things that are good, like getting good Chase Edmonds value or getting Julio before he rises. And I'm not saying it's not good, but I'm saying it ends up being completely useless and actually hurts you drafting Julio hurt you. You probably took him over Zay or Osborne or whatever. It's like it ended up hurting you, even though you thought it was like by far the most plus EV thing you could do at the time.
The only thing I remember doing with Julio was take him in the 17th or 18th round, and as soon as he shot up, I was done. Like that, it still feels good. It still feels like I did it the right way overall. I mean, it didn't do much for my teams, but it felt good for a while. What did I want to ask you? Oh, the other thing we have to do in a few weeks when the playoffs is over, it was suggested to us earlier today. We have to go back to our final offensive rankings and review what we were saying. I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised on a lot of it. There's even teams that I'm like, oh, we probably got them wrong. That if you really think about it, like the Chicago Bears, if we lowered them, like, yeah, Fields was nasty this year, but who else was on the Bears was nasty this year?
Nobody. Darnell Mooney. Yep.
Right. Kmet had like a good game.
I mean, 1 or 2 good games. Yeah.
So like, yeah, Fields is crushing, but you didn't.
It's all his legs. It's all rushing.
It's all legs. It's all legs. He's intentionally going to try to set the record this year.
He said it. He came out and said he wants the record. God bless him, by the way.
Yeah. Good for him for that. I was all pumped for him. Like, yeah, own it. But yeah, I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised. I think you are definitely 1 year ahead on a team that's going to be really popular next year.
Jets.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to get a quarterback.
Fucking Zach Wilson. God, he ruins everything for everybody. If you watch them play, by the way, those wide receivers are so tilted that he's back at quarterback. Like they had, when Mike White was out there, they had juice. They looked awesome. They're celebrating they're feeling good.
They're making shirts. Like,
dude, Garrett Wilson looked like he was going to like punt a puppy, like during the middle of that game. Like, and he almost had 100 yards, but he probably should have had 200 in that game this week. And he's just like, the ball sails over his head or it skips to him or whatever. And you could see he's like just staring off into space. Like, this motherfucker is, going to ruin my career. But I agree. Jets are exciting.
The greatest correlation I can think of for that is if like you were like, hey, Rob, I have to leave for 3 months. Your co-host for the next 3 months is going to be TJ Zakharowicz or however he decides to pronounce his last name, right? You're gone. I have to deal with TJ for 3 months. I'm making Erik Beimfohr shirts over here. Like, God, please let TJ leave. And then you finally come back. And then you're like, oh, Rob, I got to leave again for a little bit. And then TJ comes back. And I'm just sitting on stream with TJ, just staring at him. That's the correlation to it.
Shout out TJ. What a good guy. He also just shipped a battle royale tournament the other day. TJ did. Started hopping into the underdog streets. Good for him.
Whatever.
Was there anything else that we missed? I just have one like wrap up question, kind of a similar typical question I always like to ask at the end. But was there anything else that we haven't discussed that you wanted to hit?
No, that pretty much does it for me, as my TV is telling us that it's time to go.
Yeah. Who is the guy then right now? Like super chalky, ignoring your big dog pod ownership where the best plays are not chalky. Guy who's just been a stone cold smash. Maybe not a guy who was a smash last week, but like if you've looked ahead at all or just thinking about situationally, who is a guy you really want to have on a semifinal team right now?
It's got to be Kirk, right? Like
Christian Kirk as leverage.
If you can get Christian Kirk to the finals, like probably low ownership based on performance in the playoffs, but you get him in Houston. It just goes with that Trevor Lawrence point that we were making. That feels real good if you can get him through. Somehow Josh Jacobs is starting to make his name on that list. And Kelsey. If I'm at 0% Kelsey and you're at 0% Kelsey, the field overall is going to be low on Kelsey. So if you got one of those Kelsey teams live, that would feel good. For my sake, I hope no Kelsey teams make it to the finals.
Yeah, right. Of course. Yeah.
Jesus, I'm scared to death. But like, you feel real good if you have a Kelsey team based on, because I was 16% ownership on my Kelsey teams for last week, and boom, all gone.
Yep. Yep. Same. I think I had 20% last week of my teams were Kelsey, and instantly instantly gone, and he was fine. He scored 15 on underdog.
Yeah,
he was totally fine. I have 2 to piggyback on your Christian Kirk minus Travis Etienne. Similar idea. If we're all sitting here saying the Jags are not going to be super successful through the air against this Jets pass defense, the direct leverage would be into, let's give Travis Etienne 25 carries or something. Now, again, I'm not sure they're going to be super successful on the ground either, but like I said, he's leveraged this week off of a probably chalky Lawrence and Zay. And then he's literally like probably top 5 of guys I want to have in week 17. So clearly you need him in week 16 for him to be on your week 17 team. So he's there. And then another kind of direct.
Real quick on the ETN thing. The only reason that I can't root for that for you is because we are going to be shoving the week 17 shanty down everybody's throat next week. Yes. And one of the lines in that song is "Imagine drafting Travis Etienne." And other than a 3-week window, I feel really good about that line right now. So if he does it at week 17, then I'm gonna be like, God damn it.
He's going to. He plays the Texans. he plays the Texans. So you're definitely gonna. That'll be good for the brand that we can dunk on you for 9 months or whatever with the shanty. But the people are not prepared for the amount of times we're going to post the shanty clips from the shanty, etc. But the only other guy I was going to mention that's kind of like not leverage on Jacobs, not leverage on KJ Osborne or McKinnon or anything like that. But both CMC and Kittle went ham last week, and with Debo being out again, I know I mentioned him repeatedly, but I think Brandon Ayuk makes just like so much sense. Similar to Kirk, he's like Christian Kirk for that offense where, I mean, without Debo, dude, it's 3 dudes. He just happened to be the guy that got left behind last week, but he could be the guy next week, with 102, and he's going to be low owned. And he gets the Raiders also. The Niners get the Raiders in week 17. So all your Niners, I mean, if you got CMC, Kittle, Ayuk, like those are good guys to have on your team.
Yeah, imagine getting luck boxed into some sort of CMC, Devontae Adams. I guess you couldn't get that, but some sort of CMC / Raiders comeback and just out of nowhere, right? Darren Waller, who's live now. CMC Darren Waller, like that'd be crazy. That'd be a fun one to have.
100%. So we'll get out of here. I'll be back tomorrow. And we will be streaming pretty much every day this week. It's playoff season. We're excited. There's like 10 million things to talk about, 10 million teams, both ours and you guys to review. But tomorrow we will start to dig into week 16 a little bit more. I know we talked about it some this week or today, but we will start to dig into some of the week 16 matchups, some players we're excited about, etc. Get all that going. Again, keep talking through your teams. Hopefully tomorrow, everybody's draft IQs and everything will be up and running. We'll be able to see some of your opponent percentages and all that fun stuff. But of course, for Rob and for myself, we will see you tomorrow.